Devlin, Untamed. The Platform.
Welcome to the podcast, people. iOS, it's only sport. That's the name of our daily radio show on the Platform. What's the Platform? Well, the Platform is independent free media. Download the app at the App Store, the Platform NZ. 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. Politics News starts the program with Sean Plunkett. After that, it's Michael Lawsey does the talk back. Myself, Martin Devlin, Lachlan Waugh. We just kick in from 1 o'clock and we talk about silly old, dumb old, absolutely essential, crucial sport. The big, wide, wonderful world of 3 whole hours. This is the highlights of today's program. Yes, there's a T20 cricket match going on, us versus the Oz, the first of 3. But by the time this podcast gets put out, it's probably a little bit dated. So we'll sideline that. All I can say is the T20 series, every time you play Oz, you want to win. But it's kind of like the squid rings before you actually get your steak, isn't it? I mean, you just want to get those, you get them down, they're nice, but here it comes. Yeah, go on, put some mash on the side of that, and yeah, yummy. Next week, 4 days sold out at the Basin Reserve. Super Rugby is underway Friday as well, and today we spent a fair bit of time building up to the start of the comp. Justin Marshall on the podcast. Who's his top 4? Rather than pick a top 2, I want a top 4. Marshy on that. Samisoni Taukei'aho, the number two in New Zealand, number 2 hooker behind Cody Taylor. Well, he wasn't he? Then we get to the World Cup last year and Dane Coles took his place. Fair bit to prove for that young man. Chiefs hosting a Crusaders first match, Super Rugby on Friday. Samisoni joined us. Brendan Telfer, the BTE, the Brendan Telfer Experience, as always, arguing the point about the PGA Tour DQing Jordan Spieth on the weekend at the Genesis Invitational for filling out a wrong scorecard. How antiquated, how idiotic. I've been talking about this all week. How unnecessary, how amateur. What a dumb rule. The rule should be DQ'd, not him. Talk about that. Champions League was back on today. The Premier League saw Man City move even closer to Liverpool at the top of the table. Andy Raymond unfiltered out of Australia, talking Stacey Jones. He's the new Kiwi Rugby League coach. So he beats out Wayne Bennett for that position. So many topics to talk about, plus all eyes on this weekend. Supercars we'll deal with tomorrow, but Super Rugby. And starting now as we go to the mountaintop, we start the show the same way every single day. Tablets in hand, I say gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. It's a whole heap of stuff about the Super Rugby. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
People, a whole heap of stuff that we know is going to happen in Super Rugby 2024 in no particular order. The Chiefs will make the final, and the Crusaders probably will as well. The Highlanders won't, nor will the Rebels, Moana Pacifica, the Reds, the Waratahs, the Force, the Enduro, and probably my Hurricanes. And that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because it's all become a bit too predictable. There will be at least one TMO decision every week that will frustrate and infuriate every fan who bothers to watch the comp. And that's every week. That's every single week. The TMO is going to get involved and cock up a game every single week because that's what rugby is these days. The crowds will be mostly sparse. That's sad but true. The odd game will attract a reasonable walk-up. The final will be full, so will most of the playoff matches, but most round-robin matches are going to be mostly sparse. Including next weekend's Magic Round in Melbourne, what was once a great idea, and League has certainly made it that, again will be played all weekend in a stadium barely a third full. And will they get the message? Will they be back flogging the same dead horse again next year? Well, you know the answer yourself already on that. 2 weeks in, and the desperate for a story mainstream sports media will run its first story about such and such a player being a bolter for this year's All Blacks. The Blues will be really tough and really hard versus the Rebels, and they'll just give it to the Force, and they'll be all over the Reds and MP. But when it comes to the big games, the playoff, they'll collapse like the English batting did in the third test versus India. It's a given. Like they do every year because they're a tissue paper team. The Enduro will win most, if not all, of their matches at home, and everyone will say how much they love this team and the inclusion of them is great. And NZR will put out several cheesy, mucky press releases saying how great it is for the Pacific and everything else, and we're absolutely loving it. But there's no way that we could take the All Blacks to Fiji, because the whole thing is, even though we're setting Super Rugby teams up there every second week,
ultimately we thought the best thing to do,
even though it just were just the same players on a plane, just different jerseys, there's just no way. Moana Pacifica will win more games than they did last year. Well, only won one last year. No Aussie side will make the semis unless they're called the Brumbies. Eden Park will draw close to 50,000 spectators. That's spread over every single one of the Blues' home games, including finals if they do host a final. The mass media will run at least one story every 2 weeks about TJ Perenara being ripe to return to the All Blacks this year. The mass media will try and squeeze an Adi Savia story in every 2 weeks, even though he's not even playing in the competition. The mass media will pump up the Blues tyres every second week, saying they're looking like the real deal, a threat after they put another 75 points on the Rebels. And finally, the Chiefs will probably win it. And the Crusaders will if they don't.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The platform.
Lachlan, sports news headlines.
Yes, well, I'll start off with a game that's on today, being the first T20 between the Black Caps and Australia in Wellington. We heard a bit about this yesterday, that it's expected to be the city's largest crowd for a cricket game in almost a decade. Over 22,000 fans are expected to attend. It's at the Cape Town, which is a ground that doesn't really do too well with crowds full stop, let alone cricket.
Terrible place to play cricket, but good on you, Wellington. Good
22,000, that's good. You heard it just before. Stacey Jones set to be appointed the new coach of the Kiwis, replacing Michael Maguire. This is being reported. It hasn't been confirmed. The appointment is expected to be confirmed at a New Zealand Rugby Board meeting today. Sticking with league, the Warriors will be stoked for their young forward Zion Mau'u, who has copped a 2-week suspension for a dangerous tackle, so it's been downgraded. I think it was meant to be 4, but it's now down to 2.
He got out of jail.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
For that dangerous tackle on the West Tigers rival.
Look, this is what I don't understand. Like, you know, what are we meant to feel sorry for the guy? I feel sorry for the guy he clubbed across the head. That's who I feel sorry
I understand it because it's a guy who hasn't made his first grade debut, and so he's obviously finding his feet in the Warriors sort of first team setup, if that makes sense.
This is a big learning curve, isn't it?
Well, you know, you're in the first team now by the sounds of it. You're an adult. This is the stuff that happens.
Yeah, very lucky it's in a pre-season game and not a regular season game, and you cost your team a win.
Quite frustrated with some of the stuff I've seen on Twitter with
I've got no empathy or sympathy for this.
A lot of League fans, a lot of Warriors fans.
Cop it.
Yeah.
You did it. Don't do it again,
Giving
mate.
him sympathy.
I'm
and
not heaping on him.
there.
No, I'm not heaping on him. I'm just simply saying you did it.
Yeah.
Accept it. Take the responsibility. Done.
Move on. Meanwhile, sticking with the Warriors, Chance Nickel-Klukstad has issues with his hamstring and back, and that's expected to keep him sidelined for the opening 3 weeks of the season, the NRL season, of course, that is. Those 3 matches will be against the Cronulla Sharks, Melbourne Storm and Canberra Raiders. Premier League this morning, Manchester City and Brentford at home to City. Tell you what, it was 0-0 for a while, and then Erling Haaland scored. Man City winning 1-0. That result means they're now second on the table, having played their game in hand. It's quite cool, though. The top 3 in order, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. All 3 have played 25. All 3 have won 17. Liverpool have drawn 6. Man City have drawn 5. Arsenal have drawn 4. There is 2 points that separates first through third.
All going to come down to them all playing each other, right?
Quite good. And there's a 6-point gap then between third and fourth. Arsenal ahead of Aston Villa. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's deal to buy a 27.7% stake in Manchester United has finally been completed.
Wasn't this last year's story?
Well, yeah. There's all these hurdles and obstacles he's had to jump through and duck under and whatnot. The British billionaire's investment is worth around $1.6 billion. That must be US dollars. 1.25 billion pounds. NASCAR yesterday, Kiwi Shane Van Gisbergen has taken a pretty big step in his NASCAR education, you could call it. He finished 12th in his debut race in the Xfinity Series, which is like a peg below the actual Cup Series for NASCAR. That at Daytona Super Speedway. 12th, not bad in the end. I mean, he fell down to as far back as 25th or something, or 19th or somewhere around there to finish in the top 12. I think it's pretty damn good. And not to crash as well. And 2 adults have been charged with murder in last week's shooting that killed 1 person and injured 22 others after the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade. The new charges come after 2 juveniles were charged last week. And Martin, that is what is making news.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
Justin Marshall, 81 Test veteran for the All Blacks, and a man, one of the few who has worn that jersey, who speaks honestly about everything to do with New Zealand rugby. He's an absolute treasure. If you're a rugby fan, this is the guy that you need to be listening to. He pulls no punches at all. Loves his rugby, but he's also happy to analyse, theorise and criticise. We're talking Super Rugby kicking off this weekend. Justin. I can't help but look at it, I don't know about you, under the umbrella of Scott Robertson, Razor, the All Blacks, and also the changes there as well. I think that's something that sort of adds a huge dimension to this comp for New Zealanders anyway.
Well, it does. New All Black coach with a new mindset. And as we've discussed, I'm very confident and hopeful that there's going to be a variation and a change in game plan, which will involve having certain players with a certain skill set having to come into the mix. So everyone, to a degree, starts fresh, really, and including incumbent All Blacks, as to not knowing what his mindset is going to be, where he wants to take the game in the next 4 years to the next World Cup, where obviously we're very well aware the rest of the world has caught us up. We've missed out on the last two World Cups, so we need to make significant progress to make sure come Australia and the next Rugby World Cup that we're capable of winning it. And, that means that there's got to be good infrastructure in place and some really good results. So there's plenty for every player individually to play for, but equally, when you're in a good side and you've got rhythm and you're in a good team, and winning rugby is rugby that players get confidence in, then that helps as well. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how all the teams compete this year with, like I said, all the personnel changes.
Chiefs Crusaders this weekend. It's a hell of a way to start. It's a repeat of the final as well. And one of the frustrating things about the Super Rugby comp, especially last year, is you look at most rounds and you think, oh, okay, that game's worth watching. Is that? And you try and cherry pick games. They've got it right again, haven't they? Chiefs Crusaders, hell of a match. The caveat I'll put on that is the Crusaders, I don't want to say the poor Crusaders. Nobody feels empathy for the Crusaders, of course, if you are from that part of the world. But a hell of a lot of injuries. Let's start with Will Jordan. That's a real shock that this guy's now out for the comp.
Well, it is, because you're not talking just the X Factor player in New Zealand rugby. You're talking world rugby X Factor player missing out of a squad for the entire Super Rugby campaign. Now, that is a devastating blow. Equally off the back of losing Lee Halfpenny, probably for the entire tournament as well. Like, if anything, he would get back maybe for the final stages. But, he's, to a degree, he's a world-class player. His achievements and his record is impeccable, but yet he hasn't played Super Rugby in and out, and he won't have. By the time he gets back for finals, he'll be undercooked. So, a massive blow for the Crusaders, puts huge pressure on someone like Shea Fiaki, and puts massive strain on the outside backs who are already depleted. You lose Whainga Nuku out of the mix, as well as Jordan. Wow, there are two players that were absolutely devastating for the Crusaders and imperative to them from week to week. Even though, to a degree, Marty, Will Jordan was missing for a large majority of the tournament last year with his concussion problem. So, it's going to put some strain on them. Then you've got your general and Mo'unga not there anymore. So, lots for the Crusaders to think about. Veterans like Ryan Crotty back, a few others that have had a lot of rugby. So, there's massive interest in that game on Friday night. The Chiefs, conversely, boy, that backline looks absolutely lethal. If their front eight can give them good, quick ball to run onto with McKenzie, the architect, there's some firepower there. They look a formidable squad. It's going to be a big ask for the Crusaders to go to Hamilton and win that one.
Justin Marshall, 81 Test veteran for the All Blacks, with us right throughout the Super Rugby season, the international season, of course, here on the platform. Are they the team to beat? Most people will answer that question and say, yeah, obviously they are. But, that puts more pressure of a different kind on the Chiefs, because last year they did have that home finals right throughout, quarter semis, and then that last game they just... And actually, to be fair, they didn't actually play that well right throughout the quarter semis or finals, did they? They didn't play their best rugby. So that says to me that they just got to go up or find something else that they didn't have last year.
I think they've got some amazing players with fantastic strike ability, but yet they probably were a little immature to a degree on the finals situations. The game against the Reds, they could very easily have lost that as well, and they didn't look as fluid as what they had when the pressure came on. And now with the expectations of them being the side to beat, how will they handle it? You would think that was something that they addressed and thought, right, when we go forward now, we have to make sure that we are a lot more composed and we don't lose our confidence and rhythm.
All right, the Aussie teams, mate. Interesting that Phil Waugh, CEO, has challenged them. He says, for the sake of Australian rugby, you've got to stand up to the New Zealand opponents. So, I mean, it's great rhetoric, it's great words and everything, but what are you expecting out of those Australian sides? Brumbies, again, I mean, I'm looking at it going, they look to me the only team that's capable of making the semi-finals. Am I wrong?
Yeah, probably you would think about the Brumbies as always being the danger side. They're always very, very well drilled. They've got great history, and they tend to have the best resolve out of all the Australian teams. Obviously, a change of guard at the Reds with Brad Thorne no longer there. It's hard to sort of look into their pre-season form and gauge it really, but the Force equally, they've got competitor like Nick White down there now. What are they going to be like? They're always difficult at home. In retrospect, I kind of look at it and hear what Phil Waugh is saying, but I just wonder, where has that emergence of real talented personnel come through from? Because I can't really see any massive differences in the squads and the players that they've had in the last couple of years. And, when you look at that and you think of the dominance New Zealand teams have had over them, especially physically, it's a huge mountain for them to climb, and it's massive ground to make up. But, they are tough, they are Aussies, and they can be resilient, but they're going to have a really good hard look at themselves and think about being much more ruthless, much more physical if they're going to compete and get a team anywhere near the finals this year to compete against New Zealand sides. Righto,
mate, let's finish on this. I'm going to go the semi-finalists. Pick your semi-finalists because I don't want to pick the two finalists yet, but I'm going, these are mine. I'm going to go to the Chiefs. I'm going to go the Highlanders as a surprise package. I think the Brumbies are going to be there or thereabouts. Crusaders, Hurricanes, maybe. Oh, I've gone to top bloody 6. All right, and those are mine. All right. Yeah, because I think that there's going to be variances due to injuries and these squads, can they sustain them? But roll out your top 4.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to have to say that I've got to be convinced by the Crusaders. Now, it's not often those words have come out of my mouth in the last 7 years, but they've got some personnel missing and they've got some massive challenges. So I'm going to reluctantly say that they're going to be the 5th team that could possibly make the semi-finals, if that makes sense, considering you picked 6. The other ones, yeah, I think definitely the Blues will be there, the Chiefs will be there. I think the Brumbies are probably, if they win their home games, have got the opportunity. And then I think the Highlanders might sneak in as well. But I wouldn't discount the Hurricanes. So basically, if you think about it, that's 6 as well. I don't know what order they're going to be in, but I think the Crusaders at worst are 6.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
The Tight 5.
5 separate sporting issues to discuss when the bell. We move on to the next one. Give us your top 4. Your Super Rugby top 4. T20 tonight, Wellington. What does the Chapel Hadley mean to you? Your generation. I want to know what it means to you. Kylian Mbappe has signed a 5-year deal with Real. Rumours about this yesterday. Kind of a flirt with the English Premier League, but I think it's all a bit too hard to play in England for most of these players. You got 38 games, and you saw today with Man City, Brentford, that every game's like a cup final and every team kicks the crap out of you. It's easy to play in Spain. You only got 4 or 5 tough league games a year, Champions League on top of that. Zion Ma'u. Now, I just don't get all the chat and the press coverage around this, which kind of seems that he's a victim here somehow. No, the guy clubbed across the mush who got carried off the field is the victim. 2 weeks, I think that's entirely fair. I think the guy's lucky to get away with 2 weeks. And especially the way that they are restructuring head contact in England, which will eventually come down to the NRL. Champions League was back on today. Man City away, Brentford, if you want to. Stacey Jones, new coach of the Kiwis. Let's kick it, though, with Super Rugby, since that's the topic of this particular hour. My top 4, obviously the 2 teams that are playing on Friday night, the Chiefs and Crusaders. It's hard to go past those, despite the fact that the Crusaders carrying a lot of injuries. If there's an Aussie team, it's going to be the Brumbies. I always like to pick my Hurricanes in that top 4, but I actually don't think this year that we're actually that much. I'll be pleasantly surprised. The Blues will, because they will beat up on all the little boys. So when it comes to the big boys, they run away like they always do. I'm actually going the Highlanders as an outsider here. I don't know why. I think it's just because I'd quite like them to. So there you are. I think I've named 5 or 6 teams and I've got to squeeze them into 4. Give me 4.
I gave you 4 before, but again...
Change it.
Like you, mine changes a lot. I'm inclined to just go with the same 4 from the last 2 years. The Brumbies, because they play
the Aussie teams.
Australian teams. Yeah. I think they play most of them, if not all of them, twice.
They get an easy draw. I mean, how weird is this competition for a start? Everyone play everyone twice, home and away. How difficult is it?
Or just once. And then have like a 6... They do have a 16 final series, don't they? Or is it...
It's a quarterfinals.
No,
mate.
They've changed it. Isn't it now 16?
Is it? Who would know, mate?
I'll have to double check. I don't think the Hurricanes, and the only reason is they've got a good team. They're halves, so they're 9 and they're 10, and really they're 15. Not saying they're bad players. Cam Roygaard's out for most of the season. And those 3 positions aren't really that strong for them since Beauden Barrett left. And this is nothing at all against him. I'm not saying he can't coach 15s, but I haven't seen a huge... Clark Ladle has mainly coached 7s the last few years, so I'm just curious to know how he'll go. The Highlanders have a slightly better roster. I think they've got a good coaching staff, so hopefully they get better.
Yeah, it's just...
The Blues, I don't trust them at all. No, I think Vern Cotter could maybe be a bit of a hard-nosed, kind of hard-ass coach on them, which might be good for what the Blues need. The Crusaders, there's a bit of a question mark around Rob Penney. Not saying he's a bad coach, but haven't really seen it yet. And then there's the Chiefs, who have actually lost a couple of good players. So, anyway, my top 4... I probably said something different about half an hour ago. Chiefs, Crusaders, Blues, and either Highlanders or Brumbies. Probably the Brumbies just purely because they play more Australian teams. That should get them into the top 4, which will give them a home quarterfinal, and then they will probably win that because it's at home.
On the text message here, Martin, I'm not sure what NZRL are thinking. Stacey's a New Zealand legend, but if Wayne Bennett put his hat into the ring, he must get the job. What are your thoughts? I totally agree with you. I think Stacey is an assistant coach to the Kiwis. I would have absolutely applauded that. Head coaching, though, he had a few rounds with the Warriors when the Warriors players couldn't be asked. You can't really count that against him. I just think I agree with your texter that if Wayne Bennett's sitting there in the waiting room, it's a bit like Bill Belichick, who did the rounds of 3 or 4 NRL sides, Lachlan, and even my commanders weren't interested, and we got the guy that had a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl against Brady and against Belichick and absolutely choked it and bottled it. If Wayne Bennett's sitting there, it's Wayne Bennett, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Who better?
You'd hope.
So, nothing against Stacey Jones at all, but, it's everything is so contradictory about New Zealand Rugby League. Maguire can't do both jobs, even though Ivan Cleary could do both jobs. Wayne Bennett's been involved before. Why we don't want him again. Stacey can keep his assistant coach at the Warriors job, and he can coach the Kiwis, even though Maguire couldn't do both. It's listening to the crap coming out of Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of have a bunch of different meetings and play a bit of workplace politics and talk about, you can't have, as you say, guys doing 2 jobs, or we can't have conflicts of interest with someone doing the New South Wales gig and then the Kiwis gig. But look, at the end of the day, you started with one coach, you've got a different one now. Have you ended up with a better coach?
Yeah.
/ have you got the best one available?
There you go. Okay, and the answer to that is no. And the
respectfully
answer
to Stacey Jones, I think it's no.
I think it's no. Yeah. What does the Chappell-Hadley thing mean to you? What do the names Chappell and Hadley mean to you?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask because I didn't like cricket up until about 5 or 6 years ago. So nothing. As I've come to understand the game a bit better, I know the name Hadley very well, but Chappell, I don't know. It doesn't really mean a lot to me.
See, and this is what I fear when trophies get named after people, stands get named after people. You've got to continually remind the newer people to the game who these people are and why their names are on these trophies. It's really important. When Australia and New Zealand started developing a cricket rivalry, these were the players that initiated that rivalry. Richard Hadley, the demon, the scourge of Australian cricket at the time. Australia have snotted down their nose at us about cricket the whole time, right? Remember that they didn't play us for 30 or 40 years because they didn't think we were good enough. I mean, that's what the All Blacks should do now to the Wallabies. Come back when you actually can play, you guys, right? And so 1974, they deemed to play us again, right, after about 30 years. And we beat them in 1974 on the back of 2 Glenn Turner centuries. Ian Chappell, the most nasty, putrid, foul sledger ever. He was the one that said things about your wife, your kids, your mum, all that kind of stuff. Greg Chappell was the guy that instructed Trevor, his brother, to bowl the underarm. So these names are etched forever in cricket folklore. You know, and to me, it's important. If it's not important, take their names off the trophy then, and just call it the Trans-Tasman bollocks, right? I mean, I'm still livid about watching our guys giggling like little schoolgirls on the sideline a couple of years ago in that one-day Chappell-Hadley series as we're getting our pants pulled down by an average Australian side, right, who rested most of their players.
Yeah. And you know where the series was played?
It was played up bloody north in Cairns, right?
Yeah.
And our guys didn't look as though they gave us stuff.
Yeah. And there was the second match where we had restricted them to a very small total.
Mate, we had them 8 out for about 100 or something, and then they ended up getting 200
and
then
then after about 20 overs, we only had about 20 runs.
So if you're going to put these names to it, at least have the respect to make sure that every single player knows exactly who those people
what
are.
It should be, this won't happen, and part of it is because they don't like us or they don't think much of us, and also because Test cricket is, I fear, not dying, but the ICC will do their best to probably kill it at some point. That the Chappell-Hadley series should be a 3-test series between us and Australia around this time of year, every year. That's what it should be.
Should be. And the reason that it's attached to the T20 now, people, is because we don't play them in one days anymore.
Yeah. All tests. Never.
Champions League round of 16 today. Nah.
Who played?
I don't know, mate. See, when your team's not in it, you
don't care.
You don't really,
and actually, when there's only 2 English teams left in it, you also don't really care again.
Don't really care. Man City beat Brentford. We've talked about this, but quickly again, they are picking up points, even though they're not playing well.
That's what champions do.
Okay, there's 13 games to go. Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City. It's a 3-horse race. I just hope it remains a 3-horse race for the next 10 games or so. It'd be great to go into the 32, 33 game mark with you all within 2 or 3 points of each other.
Yeah.
For us neutrals.
Well, imagine if the final day of the season, all 3 teams are in contention, because all 3 teams are playing at home.
It would be brilliant,
against teams they should beat.
Brilliant. That's what you want in the league. Yeah. Finally, Zion Mau'u. You got your 2 weeks, and you should be grateful. And everyone connected to the Warriors should be grateful that charge got downgraded, because he could easily have copped 3 or 4 weeks. It's a hideous tackle. I don't care what anyone says. It's too high. It was a rush of blood to the head. And I keep reading all this stuff about arms are being put around him and people are cuddling him and people are... Mate, you did it. You clubbed a guy across the mush. You just about knocked his head off. You know, we don't know how badly injured that guy is. Sure, you feel bad about it. You should feel bad about it, mate. I mean, that doesn't mean it ends your career or anything, but it should be a hell of a lesson. Sharpen your technique up and don't let your teammates down again. That's all.
Yeah, the thing.
This whole thing about we have a society now that just doesn't accept responsibility. It's like all of a sudden, oh my God, you poor thing. For what? You did it. You poor thing, you ram raided. Why are you the poor thing? What about the guy on the end of the ram raid? What about the guy on the end of your tackle? Yeah. That's the poor thing.
The only bit that I can understand people giving him sympathy for is that it's a tackle that in union is a red, without a doubt, I think. But in league, they are a lot slower to catch on to the safer tackling laws. And that's seen as, because the way he tackles the guy, he's being tackled and then the guy sort of falls into his shoulder a bit. But, what's his name again? Zion Mau'u?
Well, you've got him with your shoulder.
He leads him with his shoulder.
It's reckless.
Yeah,
mate, that's a red card in rugby, mate.
Well, in league, it's not. That's the thing.
That's the dumbest thing ever.
The worst thing I saw was a whole lot of people on Twitter saying, oh, it's wrong. Oh, justice served. It's only 2 weeks. I'm thinking, well, it probably should be a red. If it's a red in rugby, shouldn't it be a red in league as well?
This is what I don't get. I don't get the NRL are dragging the chain on this. You are a law case away from this sport ending as a sport. Samisoni Taukei'aho, this young man playing for the Chiefs and the All Blacks, well, he just set the world alight a couple of years ago and then kind of tapered off a bit last year. He'll be disappointed that he didn't have much more of a presence than he did at the Rugby World Cup. He's the number two in the country behind Cody Taylor. How's he going to get that number 2 jersey? Big Super Rugby campaign coming up for Samisoni. Samisoni, do you think your team is going to be better than last year?
Yeah, obviously every year we try to get better than the year before, and last year we had a really awesome run. Obviously we've make it to the final and just didn't make that last hurdle, and we learned a lot from that, winning big moments in big games, and we are looking forward to testing ourselves this year and trying to push our case to get to where we were last year, but took that last hurdle and hopefully win a championship. So But that's the goal, to get better than what we did last year. So, yeah.
Well, during the round robin, 13-1, you couldn't have got much better. But during the finals, probably didn't play your best rugby. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think everyone can say that. We had a really good run during the season. Like you said, 13-1 is not easy feat for any team in this competition. It's a very tough competition with obviously the New Zealand teams and the Australian teams, the Moana and the Trua. Very tough competition. So last year we had a good run, but like you said, towards the business end, as we call it, probably didn't play our best footy and obviously come second best. And yeah, looking to improve in that area come this year. So yeah.
Bloody hell, tough year for all of you blokes who played for the Chiefs, wasn't it? Because then, of course, we go to the World Cup and we were there in Paris watching, and a heartbreaking final as well. So, I mean, yeah, bloody hell. You got
it's obviously it's not easy to lose two finals in a year, but got married at the end of last year. So
congratulations,
me,
mate.
I guess. And, yeah. So I win to finish a year like that. So.
Go on.
Yeah.
What do you want to personally achieve this year? Because for most of us All Black fans, when you burst onto the scene in 2021, you've got all the attributes. I mean, you're a powerful runner, you're strong, you're fast, all of that, that. And we kind of just, I think most of us thought that it was just natural that you would take over as the number one, number two in the country. Hasn't quite happened for you yet. What do you have to do differently this year?
I think it's just obviously taking my learning from last year and just developing my game around what I need to be better at, from feedback from coaches, but also studying my competition. Cody had an outstanding year last year, and hats off to him. He played magnificently well and fully deserved to be wearing the number 2 last year in the All Blacks level. And my challenge this year is to look at what I can improve and give him a run for his money in that area, and hopefully I can do that through my performances in Super Rugby. And obviously it's always first thing first, play well for your franchise and hopefully get picked to the All Blacks and go from there. But for me, I don't like to look too far ahead. This week, Crusaders at home, FMG, can't get any bigger than that. So my whole focus is facing the Crusaders on Friday, and after that, next week comes. But yeah, Friday is where I look forward to, and I take it day by day, just starting with a captain tomorrow and then play on Friday.
Are you allowed to tell us that you're in the team? I know it gets announced at 4:00. No state secret though, is it? You're in?
Yeah, obviously coming off the bench. Bradley is starting, and then looking to inject from the bench and get some energy for the first game. Obviously haven't played since World Cup and had 40 minutes last week, and Bradley been going really well and throughout the whole pre-season. So, yeah.
I know his family well from Taranaki. Yeah, that's his dad's Gordon, I think, isn't it? Who was a tight head prop for the All Blacks as well. Really big, famous family.
Yeah, so it's going really well. So we'll get our first crack at the Crusaders, and hopefully I can come in and put my mark on that as well. So looking forward to that.
We need to talk.
Playing your favourite game.
We need to talk.
It's called What is More Chance of Happening?
Next!
What I do is I present 2 scenarios, Lachlan. You tell me out of the 2 what is more chance of happening. You just about said one before.
Next!
What is more chance? The Chiefs win Super Rugby this year. They go one better than last year. And do remember that they beat the Crusaders twice in round robin. They couldn't do it in the final. Or you reckon the Warriors won't make the 8? I'm saying the 4. The Chiefs win Super Rugby this year. What is more chance of happening? That or the Warriors make the 8?
Oh, the Warriors make the 8.
The Warriors make the 8?
Yeah, I was joking before. I think they will.
Okay, well, let's say the Warriors make the 4.
I wouldn't be utterly shocked if they missed out. Same, to be honest, if the Broncos missed out, I would be utterly shocked. Well, no, I'd be a bit more shocked.
Well, as far as the Warriors go, it'd have to be an absolute form reversal from last year.
It would have to be sort of underestimating opposition a little bit with some teams getting better and also a ton of injuries. I can't see them missing the 8. But that's got more chance of happening. You said a second thing just there, didn't you?
Well, I think they've got the winning mentality. They know what to do now in this competition to win games that ordinarily over the years they've lost. The last 20 minutes they come on strong. They've got a couple of great additions to the squad. I'm not saying that the other teams aren't getting better as well, because every team actually does get better. But I think it'd be a hell of a shock if the Warriors don't make the finals this year. All right. What is more chance of happening then? The Chiefs go on, do what they couldn't do last year, win this year's Super Rugby, or the Black Caps beat Aussie tonight, first T20 at the Cape Town. Now, I've asked this question throughout the show, and you've changed your mind a couple of times.
I have, and I said some stuff yesterday that I think I contradicted within about 4 minutes of saying both things about the Black Caps Australia tonight. Look, I don't know really what to make of it, only because Australia aren't the beasts in T20 or in T20 cricket as they are in ODI or Test cricket,
here's the other
right?
question. Okay, if this was an ODI tonight...
Oh, no.
See, I'd say Australia.
If it was a Test, I'd probably say Australia as well.
That's right, okay. T20 shortened format, only 20 overs each. We got a hell of a chance.
All you need is a couple of blokes in your batting order to go nuts.
I mean, it is the one form of cricket which is absolutely hit or miss on the day. As Jimmy Neesham said, you can't dwell on a T20 result.
Yeah, and what I was actually going to follow up with that is that, by contrast, you're not saying the Chiefs beat the Crusaders week 1, you're saying them to win all of Super Rugby. So that probably includes them finishing top 2, so they have at least a home semi, and then winning the final against whoever it ends up being. So I think there's more chance the Black Caps win tonight. Only because it's a bigger, it's like me saying to you, what's got more chance of happening? Man United making the top 4, or the Black Caps winning this series, or Black Caps winning one test, maybe. I don't know. No, winning this T20 series.
I'd say
a lot needs to happen.
I'd say United got a more chance of making the top 4.
A lot needs to happen for United to make the top 4. Only 2 things really need to go on for the Black Caps to win the series. That's what I'm saying.
It's very rare for Australia to lose 2 matches in a row or 2 out of 3 matches. This particular Australian side, how many did they lose at the One Day World Cup? They lost a couple, didn't they?
Yeah, but this is T20.
But they lost a couple at the start of the tournament, didn't they?
Yeah, they lost to India and
South Africa, and then they went on and won every single game from then and just got stronger.
Including absolutely dicking us.
What is more chance of happening? The Chiefs do win Super Rugby. They won 13 out of their 14 round-robin games last year. Let's not forget that. Or the Knicks hang on and win this minor premiership. And again, 5-point lead. Melbourne Victory came. Look, if Melbourne Victory hadn't won that game last night, and I didn't even know it was on, to be honest, but watching them score 2 really late goals on the highlights today and close it to within 5. If they had have dropped points in that match, were 8 points behind or whatever, I would be ticking the Knicks and saying, I reckon it's theirs right now. Because the other 2 teams that are there, Central Coast Mariners and also MacArthur, they just beat MacArthur on the weekend with a really weakened side, right?
And Central Coast, they drew with them, didn't they?
Uh-huh.
And so that point, that gap between them is now 5. Is still 5. So I think there's more chance that the Phoenix finish top. I'm all in now, because the thing that they are continually doing is they're winning games on the road. I think that's a huge. Thinking about the Wellington Phoenix history. There's been times, obviously they made the finals a fair few times in the past, particularly the last 4 or 5 years. And I remember there was the first year Ernie Merrick turned up. They were top of the table for a good 4 or 5 weeks in a row early in the season. So they've had these moments before, maybe not this exact playing group and coaching group. But I can't remember a time where they were consistently winning games on the road.
Same.
I think that's a huge mark of how good a team is.
To me, it was like what the Warriors did last year, okay? And I'm quickly going through here that. So, one away at the Cowboys, one away at Cronulla, one away at the Dragons, one away at the Eels, one away at the Titans. What else we got? One away at the Dogs. I mean, you win 6 or 7 on the road in the NRL, you're making the fight. If you defend home court. And one of the things at the Breakers with the first team in all the Trans-Tasman comps to be able to do this regularly was to go away and win. And I think that's been a real handicap for both the Warriors and the Phoenix. And I totally agree, it's the most impressive thing about them.
Next!
What is more chance of happening? The Chiefs have got the strongest squad, mate. I mean,
No, they don't. No, they don't. I think the Crusaders still do by a mile.
Well, okay.
You go through the best 15, that Crusaders team
can they put that out on the field, though?
Well, the bigger question mark with the Crusaders is not to say he's not a good coach, but simply Rob Penney taking over from Razor. That's the only question mark, I think.
Well, what is more chance of happening? The Chiefs do it, or Manchester City go back-to-back in the Champions League. Now, we saw a couple more round of 16 matches. I'm not so sure after what I've seen, what I've read of the Champions League, that any of these sides are good enough to beat them. Remember last year with Man City? Throughout those knockout rounds, Lachlan, they never broke sweat. Like, I think they beat Leipzig or one of the German sides by 6 goals. They beat Real.
I think they beat them 7-0 in one game.
Yeah, 4-0 or 5-1.
Same Bayern, they just dicked Bayern as well.
Bayern as well. And in each one leg out of the 2 legs, they won by 4 or 5 goals. And so they got to the final, and it was a little scratchy at the very end with Inter Milan. But really, they weren't tested at all. I mean, it's one of the Champions Leagues where you just sit there and you go, who else is in there? Give me another team that can match this side.
Mm.
And at the moment, Bayern Munich are 8 points behind the leader in
Well,
La
they're
Liga.
down 1-0 in aggregate and they're tied with Lazio
There you
as
go.
well.
Okay, so apart from Real, who else is in their way?
No one, I don't think.
I don't think so.
I think Inter are having a good season in Serie A, and they won this morning against Atletico, so maybe Inter could be a tricky... And they made the final last year. There's Real.
Well, they're not going to demolish Man City. Man City are capable of kicking everyone, aren't they?
But yeah, Barcelona aren't doing too well in their league, and they've got Napoli, who are... Well, Napoli just sacked their coach, I think. They're not doing well. Apart from City, there's one other that I think could win. It would be Real, and there's 2 others that could give City and Real some trouble, which would be Inter and, dare I say, Arsenal.
So what is more chance of happening? Chiefs win?
No, City win.
City win?
They're winning the Champions League.
Okay, back-to-back for Man City. Maybe it might get taken off them with the financial fair play regulation comes in here. What is more chance of happening? We've got Brendan Telfer in a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen. The Chiefs win this year's Super Rugby, or SVG proves himself in his first year in Xfinity and gets to race the big dance next year. Now, Nate Ryan said to us yesterday he expects him maybe to spend 2 years in Xfinity.
I'm not totally clued up with how easily it is for someone to get elevated. I mean, like, Supercars, for example, is a funny one where you have a good season, and I think Super 2 is what it's called now. And if you win it, or you're a handy driver, you get promoted to Supercars the next year. F1 is, if you're doing really well in F2, it can take you 2 or 3 years. You could get elevated in that very season, depending on who you're a reserve driver for or a junior driver for. I don't know how NASCAR really works with that, but if Nate Ryan's saying he expects him to be in there for 2 years, I would say it's kind of unlikely he gets in there next year.
So the Chiefs have got more chance of winning the Super Rugby title.
Well, then again, if Van Gisbergen wins a couple of races... Mm-hmm. I could imagine a couple of teams taking a punt on him.
Yeah, same.
Because with American sports, they're quite, compared to down here, they're much more ambitious.
You know.
And so I could absolutely see a team going, no, I like this guy from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? No. I'm going to say there's more chance Shane Van Gisbergen drives the NASCAR next year.
What is more chance of happening? The Chiefs take out the Super Rugby title, or the Highlanders make the top 4? And we both picked the Highlanders as probably the best of the rest.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them make the top 4.
I would as well. Well, the thing is, it's not based on anything really apart from wishful thinking.
That's what it is at this stage.
They do have a good coach. I really like their coaching group. I mean, aside from Jamie Joseph returning as director of rugby, I don't mind Clark Dermody.
No, you put those guys with one of the other squads and see how well they do.
I think Tom Donnelly's an assistant, I think.
Give them the... Well, okay, we've got Vern Cotter and we've got Tony Brown at the moment.
Yeah, Tony Brown's not there for the whole year, though, is he?
But, before Vern Cotter arrived, take those guys and give them that blue side. What would they do to them? I think they would harden them up massively. Yeah. What they've done is they've taken a bunch of Highlanders players who most of them are rejects or aren't wanted by the other Super Rugby sides, right?
Yeah.
And there's quite a few of them that hadn't even played NPC
their captain,
last year.
Billy Harmon, who has been one of the better loose forwards of the last... Oh, just had confirmation. Stacey Jones appointed Kiwis coach.
Yeah.
I just got an email. Confirmation. There we go. I would say... So Billy Harmon, he's probably been one of the best performing open side flankers of the last couple of years, and I think he was in the All Blacks 15. Really good player. He was pretty much a reject from the Crusaders, and they picked him up and turned him into something really good. So, and they've done that with a couple of guys.
Top 4 or Chiefs win it?
Chiefs win it.
Chiefs win it. Final one. What is more chance happening? The Chiefs win this year's Super Rugby comp, or New Zealand wins 5 or more medals at the Olympics in Paris?
Medals or gold medals?
Medals.
Oh, we get 5 or more medals. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, Lisa Carrington's going to get at least a couple, right?
Yeah.
We traditionally win one in the yachting. Rowing, we got Hayden Wild's got a chance. We've got swimmers that have got a chance. The sevens, men's and women's, both got real chance. Well, they both should medal, no question about it. You got Tom Walsh. You got other track and field athletes. Yeah, I think we'll pick up at least.
Yeah, so in 2004, you were at these Olympics. We had 5. And then in 2008, we had in total 9. 2012, 13. 2016, 18. And then 2020, we had 20.
There you go.
I'm sure we can manage 5.
ARU, Andy Raymond Unfiltered. That's the name of his podcast. That's the name of his Twitter handle. He joins us every single Wednesday here at the platform. Many topics to discuss. First up, Stacey Jones. He gets to keep his Warriors assistant coaching job and coach the Kiwis. So Madge Maguire couldn't do both, even though in the past Ivan Cleary did. Is he the right guy for the job, Stacey Jones? An Aussie perspective on this. The man who beat out Wayne Bennett to coach the Kiwis, from Andy Raymond. We're stunned by this. Look, no disrespect to Stacey at all. I love Stacey, but as a head coach, I'm not so sure about it. I still think he's got a hell of a lot to prove. He had that little stint with the Warriors when the players couldn't be asked playing a couple of years ago. As an assistant, I think he's got a hell of a place. Some people are an assistant coach and some people are a head coach. I just, feel that when you've got Wayne Bennett sitting there in the waiting room and you don't pick him. I mean, it just seems really confusing. Everything about the way that NZRL have gone about this and now the decision, it doesn't seem to make as much sense as it should.
Okay, I'll play the counter for you here. I'm not a fan of any national sporting team being coached by a non-resident or a non-passport holder. Wayne has coached England. Wayne has coached New Zealand. I get it. It happens in rugby all the time. We've had a couple of Wallabies coached.
Well, you got a new one, Joe Schmidt.
Yeah, we've got a new one.
Yeah.
I hate the thought of it. I really do. I think a New Zealand side should be coached by a New Zealander. No, an Australian is not going to get the most out of a New Zealand boy in terms of passion, pride, and commitment to the flag than a New Zealand coach.
Well, Maguire did all right as a counter-argument, mate. 30-0 speaks volumes.
I'm not saying they don't do all right, but I'm saying it's just something, and I'm taking Wayne and Stacey out of the equation here. It's just something that rubs me the wrong way. It really does, and maybe I'm backward, maybe I'm old, maybe I'm
You're
just
all those
grumpy.
things, mate. All of those.
Yeah,
things.
and all of those things.
Yeah.
I like the fairy tale of someone leading their country. I really do. I'm a Stacey fan like you. I think he's a wonderful football mind. I think he's got all the traits to be a terrific coach. Whether he's got that angry Stacey that every coach needs, whether he's got that mongrel about him, I think he does. Hard act to follow. Coaching is all in the timing. If you walk into a club or a national side at the right time, it can only be positive. At the wrong time, it can be negative. Tough gig taking over Michael Maguire and a 30-0 scoreline.
Yeah.
Because anything less than 32-0 over Australia next game is seen as a regression, a step backwards. So I don't know if the timing's right for Stacey. Look, if I was, and I'm not, but if I was in line and being put up for a coaching job, I'd still wear well clear of the Kiwi side because it's mission impossible. You're not going to beat Australia 30-0 next time, you wouldn't think, so it's a tough gig. England, they can only improve. The Cowboys, they can only improve. The Dragons, they can only improve. Imagine trying to take over Penrith at the moment if Ivan Cleary decided that he didn't want to continue coaching and he'd done everything he wanted to in rugby league and he walked away. The guy that takes Ivan Cleary's position at Penrith, he's just on a hiding.
Well, look, it's just like, whoever followed Sir Alex Ferguson, wasn't it? And look what's happened in the 10 years that's happened. Yeah. With a couple of the kookiest ideas ever. Yes, we're going to argue about this ridiculous DQing of Jordan Spieth at the Genesis Invitational on the weekend. And Telfer that Test cricket has got to have a subs-bench. The only sport in the world where you can't drop a player, pull a player on, exchange a player. Well, no, and there's a good reason for that, because otherwise you just have a lineup of Malcolm Marshall and Joel Gunner and those guys coming in to bowl, and then you have Martin Crowe and Greg Chappell in the world's best. No, come on, Telfer. Don't be silly. Or is it not a bad idea? Jordan Spieth stupidly DQ'd out of that tournament. You and me argued about this, I remember, once on Radio Sport, and I'm glad that now you've turned around to my way of thinking that it's an antiquated dickhead of a rule when it's a computerised leaderboard and everyone knows the score. Telf, why in professional golf do you still have to sign your own card, mate?
Well, it's a part of this old, I suppose, Victorian ethic of, being honest and upfront and being responsible for yourself. And it is a peculiar thing about golf. I mean, you'll see golfers who actually admit that the ball has moved a micromillimeter when it's not supposed to when they're replacing it, and they'll call a penalty against themselves. It's a very common thing in golf, and this is part of it. Is that when you have a round of golf, you keep your own score and you keep your partner's score, right? Particularly at a professional level. And so at the end of the round of the golf, you go into the scoring tent, and the first thing you do is you make sure that the scores that you've got on your card are exactly the same as your mate's got on his card. And if there's any difference, well, you sort it out and work out what the score should be. For some unknown reason, Spieth sort of skipped that point. I'm sure he checked his scores at the end of his round, but it turned out that on one hole, a par 3, he'd had a bogey. In other words, he had 4 shots, but it appeared on the card as only having 3. And it was dumb on his part. And yes, to disqualify someone for something as relatively minor as that is harsh in this time, as you say, where there is all electronic scores and everything's on a scoreboard. And also, at professional level, there's always a official scorer who walks with
the other thing.
Golfers.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to cheat in golf at any level.
I never thought for a second he was cheating, because, I mean, that would be the dumbest way to cheat. He just fog-brained it, didn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, you could argue, which I suppose golf would, that in every sport, if you make a mistake, you're going to get penalised. In your beloved sport, if a goalkeeper misses an easy volley and he gets nutmegged and the ball goes into the back of the net, he's made a mistake. He and his team get penalised. So
I just think of it more from the fans' point of view. With Live Golf hanging around, Tiger had already withdrawn from the tournament. People want to see these guys play, mate. It just seems...
Yeah, I know.
The Chapel Hadley name has now been attached to the T20 series because we're not going to play them in ODIs anymore. I feel a bit sad about that. But also, Brendan, do you think that the young people really care who the Chapel and the Hadley are, or what, when you attach names like this?
Well, yeah, I think they will.
I hope they do.
I think it does. If you follow cricket, the names will ring a bell.
Well, they do for us. But I asked Lachlan, he's 26. He doesn't know who the Chapels are, mate. Doesn't have a clue. Yeah.
Well, he shouldn't be producing a sports show then if he doesn't know.
Well, no, but he's 26, mate. The Underarm was in 1981, remember? So, his parents weren't even born.
But there's a lot of titles in sport that go back 50, 100 years, and we don't change them because a new generation comes along. I've had the impression for a number of years that both Australia and New Zealand cricket want to hang on to this thing because it's Chappell and Hadley, and they are revered names, basically, in the history of cricket in both those countries. But they're struggling to kind of get any real meaningful return from it. It's not something that happens every year.
No.
And now they've brought in the T20s as well or something into it. It's a very romantic thing, the Chapel Hadley. And when it first started, it was a brilliant thing. It had very quickly, I think, it had acquired an almost Bledisloe Cup-like manner about it.
Yeah, of course.
But it's dissipated. It's a bit like, the old Chatham Cup or something, which used to, but it's just gone with the passage of time and other events have come along. But actually, speaking of cricket, Martin, I just want to put a little plug in here, off the wall. This is a little bit off the wall, and it's to do with Test cricket. I just want to see the ICC, that's what they call themselves still, I imagine, International Cricket Council. I want to see them enter into the 21st century and follow the lead of every other major world team sport of any significance, from basketball to netball to rugby, league, football and hockey, and to bring into Test cricket in-game replacements. In cricket, we've had this bizarre Victorian sort of ritual that's been around for 150 years since the first Test was played in 1877, where the only way you can replace someone in a cricket game, a Test match, and lower level as well, is with the 12th man, who can come on. He can get batsmen out by catching the ball. He can run batsmen out, but he can't bowl and he can't bat.
No.
It's a bit like saying to rugby, who fought tooth and nail for decades not to bring in replacements, but eventually in the mid-1990s they did. It's a bit like saying to rugby, look, you can bring a replacement on, but they can't score tries and they can't kick goals. They can run, pass, and that's all they can do. Wouldn't Test cricket be so much better and more interesting and enjoyable? It's not going to revolutionise the game if you could make in-game replacements. So by the time of the 4th or the 5th day, you've got a really good idea what the pitch is doing, you can either stick with your quicks or bring in another spin bowler. But at the moment, captains have to make a decision before the toss, before the game even starts, what's going to happen to the pitch for the next 5 days. And they might pretend that they're experts, as commentators do, but they're not. If it rains for an hour on the third day, the pitch will change completely.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.